Donald Trump is finding out very quickly just how unpopular his policies are, and nowhere is that on better display than in deep red Alabama. Alabama politicians, both on the right and left, of course, have spoken out in recent weeks about a plethora of Donald Trump's policies, including the destruction of the Department of Education, DOGE, the USDA cuts that are robbing local farmers of money to give food to hungry school children, and of course the 25% tariffs on automobiles that Donald Trump put in place last week that affects the jobs of 90,000 Alabama workers. But let's start with the Department of Education. 2 weeks ago, the Trump administration announced, of course, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education. DOGE went in, did a bunch of job cuts. And then on that same day, Alabama Superintendent Eric Mackey came out and said, we can't access our money. You know, we've got $9 million in federal money that's supposed to be coming because we need it for our education system here in Alabama. And because of the DOGE cuts, we can't get our $9 million. Now, within a matter of hours, that of course was rectified. So Alabama Superintendent Eric Mackey, did come out and say, okay, they fixed that. Now let me tell you another problem. And that's when he went into the fact that the cuts to the U.S. Department of Agriculture have now stripped money from local Alabama farmers to provide food to hungry school children. So when Mackey said, hey, your DOGE cuts, ruining the Department of Education, robbing our education system of $9 million in one day, that's bad. They're like, okay, we'll fix it. And he's like, cool. While you're at it, maybe fix the money that you took away from our local farmers, some of whom depended on that money to even be able to stay alive. And of course, you were feeding our hungry school children, which is always a good thing. Maybe do something about that too. Unfortunately, on that particular issue, the Trump administration was silent. Then, the worst one. I don't know if it gets any worse actually than taking food away from hungry kids, but last week, the tariffs, the 25% tariffs that Donald Trump put on imported automobiles and automobile parts, as I mentioned, affects 90,000 workers in the state of Alabama. For those of you who have never been to Alabama, which I do encourage everybody to go there, it is an absolutely beautiful state. Horrible politics, beautiful state, and I do love it. But they actually have quite a few automobile assembly plants. Those plants are going to struggle to stay in business when the parts that they import to build the vehicles here in America suddenly rise in price by 25%. Demand for automobiles will decrease, and if demand decreases, there's no need to build as many automobiles, and if there's no need to build as many automobiles, people will lose their jobs. So multiple different Alabama politicians on both the left and right have spoken out about that because these are our districts. We're representing these areas with these automobile manufacturers who, again, employ tens of thousands of people per district, and you're killing them. All of this comes directly from the top. All of this comes from Donald Trump himself. He is doing this to his supporters. I don't know that you could go anywhere in this country and find more MAGA supporters than you would in the state of Alabama. I mean, I know because I live 10 minutes from Alabama how MAGAfied that state really is. They are the true believers, and they are getting screwed over just as bad, if not worse, in some instances, than the rest of the country. And the problem is, these politicians, those Republican politicians in Alabama, they're mad about it, but at the same time, they're not going to do anything about it because they themselves are also MAGA. First, Elon Musk gutted federal agencies. Then he slashed public services. Now his people are fighting to keep their corruption under wraps. But a federal judge ruled Musk's alleged Department of Government efficiency is not exempt from open records laws. Judge Christopher Cooper made it clear that the Trump administration completely failed to argue against the fact that DOGE is acting with massive unchecked power. Ground News analyzed dozens of sources covering this from across the political spectrum. And, comparing coverage, you'll see how some spin this as a partisan issue while others call it what it is: proof of corruption. Same story, different spin, and exactly why you can't blindly trust the first headline you see without knowing the biases behind them. That's why I've been relying on my partners at Ground News for a long time. If you like my show, you'll love how their app and website lets you compare coverage with context on each source's political bias, credibility, and financial incentives. This way, you're not just taking one source's word for what's happening, you're seeing past the layers of selective reporting shaping your worldview. Billionaires and political agendas are controlling more and more of our media, deciding what they want us to see and think. Ground News, on the other hand, it's independent, it's nonpartisan, and only committed to helping us think critically about the stories shaping everything from public opinion to public policy. And since I can't track everything Trump and Musk are doing or undoing alone, I've curated feeds that track them for me from credible sources to make sure I'm giving you all the most reliable information. And now you can too, for nearly half the price. Go to ground.news/Farron to get the same unlimited access Vantage plan that I use for just $5 a month. Take back control of how you stay informed today. The link is in the video description.